I have an idea. In fact, I have a great idea. But what's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear that someone has an idea? Regardless of the industry size or type, ideas are usually associated with a light bulb. The bigger the idea, the brighter the light bulb. But what's the connection between the light bulb and the ideas? Well, it all goes back to 1879, when Thomas Edison unveiled the first incandescent light bulb prototype that lasted a record-breaking time of 15 hours. Edison and his team continued to innovate on the light bulb, experimenting with different filament types, until they reached a prototype that lasted 1,500 hours, making it commercially viable to produce and consume at mass quantities, and change the way we light up our entire world. And it all started with an idea. That's why light bulbs are associated with ideas. But they're also associated with innovation because Thomas Edison did not invent the light bulb. He innovated on it. What's more important to note is that Edison and his team had failed multiple times before reaching the prototype that worked and changed everything. And that's because innovation is a mindset. It's a continuous cycle of improvement. And failure is an integral part of that cycle. When an innovator sets out on a project or an endeavor, failing the first time, 10 times, even 100 times, does not deter that innovator from pushing forward, learning from each failure as they go along. In fact, James Dyson has been quoted multiple times to say that he went through a few thousand prototypes before innovating the vacuum cleaner industry for the better. Getting rid of the bag and creating a vacuum that does not lose suction over time. Now, in later interviews, James started referring to the exact number of failed prototypes. 5,126. That's a lot of failures. But Dyson, the company, has just reported a record profit in 2021 of $1.7 billion. That's profit, not revenue. Imagine if James had given up after the 5,000th failure. So remember, innovation is a mindset, and failure is only fuel to that mindset. But sometimes, failure can take you into a different direction or path. You just have to look at it from a different lens. And that's what happened to Dr. Spencer Silver, a 3M scientist who set out on a project to innovate and find an adhesive that was bigger, stronger, and tougher. Those were the success criteria. Only to arrive after several failed iterations at the complete opposite, a weaker and lighter adhesive. Not knowing what to do with it, he started sharing his results internally, calling it a solution looking for a problem. And that's when he partnered with Art Fry, another 3M scientist who was frustrated because gravity always won against his paper bookmarks. The light bulb went off, and the Post-it notes was born. The rest is history, and now 3M makes over 50 billion Post-it notes a year. What would have happened if Dr. Silver shoved that project and said, that's a failure? Now, who here uses any of these fantastic failures? Awesome. So let's go back to my great idea. I have a fantastic and amazing idea of innovating and digitizing one of the oldest, largest, and most dangerous industries in the world: construction. And I certainly am not alone. There's been many advancements and technologies introduced to the construction industry within the past 5 years than there's been in the previous 500. Anything from generative design and simulation to extended reality, self-flying drones, robots, laser scanning, 3D printing, prefabrication, AI, and did I mention robots? But there's also been just as much pushback and hesitation in adopting these technologies at scale. Frankly, because it's a bit overwhelming looking at all these things at the same time, but also because it's so much easier to revert back to, we've always done it this way. And it worked. I mean, buildings are still going up every day. I'll never forget the first time I stepped foot on a job site in my new role as an innovation lead. It was a cold Tuesday morning in the outskirts of South Tennessee. I arrived at the job site full of hope and aspiration of not only implementing a new technology that would increase safety and efficiency for everyone involved, but also in pushing the entire industry forward towards the digital age, even if just by an inch. The superintendent waited until I finished my pitch on why we needed to implement that technology, and he asked me one question. Son, how old are you? I have to admit, I wasn't even that young or inexperienced then. So 36, I replied confidently. He looked me up and down and he said, I've been doing this longer than you've been alive. Don't you come to my job site and tell me it's not safe or efficient. Now that was a gut punch, and I felt it. I was defeated, deflated, and saw no value in continuing the conversation any further. So I thanked him for his time, packed up my belongings, and flew back home that night. And when I arrived at the office the next morning, I went straight back to the drawing board, asking questions like, what could I have done differently? How could I have pitched this at a different light, knowing the possible pushback that I'll get? That was a pivotal moment in my journey as an innovation leader, and I'm so glad that it happened early on. But I vowed to continue the push to test and implement these technologies, creating safer, more efficient, and higher quality projects. But I had to do it through a different lens. Instead of focusing on, here's a shiny new technology and what it can provide to you, I started asking questions like, what problem statement do you care to solve for? What pain point would you like to help me alleviate? Then and only then would I pair that with a possible technology to help solve it. The conversation shifted to one of listening more than talking and showing. After all, what's the technology going to do if it doesn't have a clearly defined problem statement and a bought-in end user that would implement it? Not much. I haven't arrived at my 5,126th failure yet, but I'm trending that way. I've gotten robots stuck in places where they shouldn't be. I've destroyed several 360-degree cameras, gotten dozens software frozen and unresponsive because I pushed them to the limit. But on the bright side, I haven't yet crashed any drones, although I got them pretty darn close a couple of times. But even after evaluating more than 500 new technology and solutions, both from the startup ecosystem and some of them internally, ideas submitted through our innovation program, I was only able to pair some of those with relevant problem statements and bought-in end users and start a structured pilot program. However, the success rate of going from a pilot project to an at-scale organizational solution is still at a whopping 10%. But the cycle continues because innovation is a mindset. And it applies to all our personal lives as well, in every facet of it. You are all innovators at the core, even if some of you don't believe it. Let me give you an example. The pandemic hit, and we all hated the lockdown. But we all activated that innovative mindset overnight. Finding ways of completing work-related projects from our makeshift office kitchen. Some of us reopened small businesses safely and responsibly using technologies they may have never even heard of before the pandemic. And we all found different routines and ways of communication to help us cope with being stuck with family members for months at a time. Yeah, they drove me crazy too. But above all, teachers were the most innovative during the pandemic. Absolutely. They did not invent Zoom or Teams, but they found innovative ways of reaching students through this new medium, delivering content, and successfully completing the school year against all odds. So thank you to all teachers. And yes, there was plenty of failures from the teachers, students, parents, family members, even the technology providers. But because we didn't have any other option or choice, we marched on, adapting and innovating. So let me ask you this. When was the last time you did not start a project or acted upon an idea that you had because you were concerned that it may fail. Well, here's my advice to you. Do it and fail. Fail early, fail fast, fail spectacularly. Learn from that failure, try again, and keep going. And you will go places you never even thought imaginable. You don't have to be an inventor, but you can easily be an innovator. Just change your mindset around failures. Thank you.